Egyptology. From the name alone, can you guess what it is? No, I'm not trying to trick you. As the name obviously indicates, it's the scientific study of ancient Egypt, a historic and rich culture spanning from 3100 BCE to around 332 BCE, almost 3,000 years. It was a culture so vast that the first documented Egyptologists were ancient Egyptians themselves. So, considering how long experts have been studying it, you'd expect them to know almost everything about the ancient treasures found here, right? Well, no. Despite researching for centuries, there are discoveries Egyptologists have made that defy even their understandings, and worse, that scare them. From brutal burial practices to mathematical miracles, it's time to take a look at discoveries in Egypt that have terrified Egyptologists. Well, hello there, cutie. Oh, sorry, I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to him. He's soft, cuddly, and irresistible. He's my perfect real-life copy, and you can take him home. Bartholomew Egbert Amazed is now available in all his fluffy glory. You've all been asking, so we finally made it. We have a plushie you can purchase. But hurry though, because we only made 500 of them. You might also want to check out our amazing array of other products in our store, where you'll find premium quality t-shirts and hoodies with mind-blowing designs, super fun holographic stickers, and mugs to inject an extra dose of amazement into your caffeine kicks. And keep your eyes peeled, because we'll be adding new exciting products frequently. All items are designed with love by us, and every purchase you make directly funds what we do here on this channel. Join the Be Amazed community and look cool while doing it. A bone to pick. If there's one thing ancient Egypt is frighteningly famous for, it's their mummies. Mummies, not mommies. Though you may want your mommy once we're done here. Now, mummification is a burial process by which all moisture is removed from a body, leaving dried forms that don't easily decay. Egyptians damn near perfected this process, and as such, it's estimated more than 70 million mummies were created during the ancient Egyptians' time. However, back in 2021, a newly discovered mummy stood out from all the others. It was a 4,000-year-old mummy found inside a tomb in Aswan, once known as the ancient city of Swenet, though it wasn't the mummy archaeologists were expecting. They were investigating the reign of Egyptian queen Hatshepsut. But a series of bad omens struck the team, almost like they were being warned away from the burial site. A violent sandstorm had practically blinded them, delaying their journey along with all the elements of the desert environment working against them. And once the team finally made the mere 650-foot journey to the site hidden in the cliffs, Hatshepsut was nowhere to be found. But someone else was. However, this 4,000-year-old mummy wasn't a real mummy. Once the lid of the terracotta sarcophagus was removed, what they found was little more than a skeleton wrapped in a black shroud, which, despite not having been buried properly, was still immaculately preserved. But who the skeleton belonged to was an even bigger shock. Bone experts revealed the remains were that of a woman who was around 70 years old. In ancient Egypt, the average life expectancy was a mere 25 to 35 years of age. Women's life expectancy was usually lower due to the risks of childbirth, so making it to 70 was almost unheard of. Who this woman is and how she lived as long as she did is still a mystery to this day. Well, that's just fine. Nothing unnerving about a black shrouded skeleton nobody can identify or explain at all. Someone hold me. Tunnels to the tomb. The Great Pyramid of Giza is classed as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, with very, very good reason. At 454 feet tall, this thing has a volume of 92 million cubic feet, which is made up of limestone, granite, mortar. Within these blocks, passages and chambers have been carved out and built in, which served as tombs for the pharaoh Khufu and his queen. It is undeniably glorious, having been explored, researched, and studied by Egyptologists relentlessly for some 4,000 years. However, in February 2023, scientists around the world were shocked when infrared scans of the Great Stone structure revealed several voids along with a 30-foot passage hidden, of all places, right above the main entrance. Scientists used an endoscope, a sort of small camera on a stick, only 6 millimeters wide, to move between the stones without disturbing them and get a clearer idea of what the passage looked like. However, what lies beyond, at the time I'm making this video, no one knows. It could be a burial chamber, but scientists have pointed out that its entrance shouldn't be sealed up if that's the case. As it is, the room is completely inaccessible. Many of its underground passageways are also a puzzle, as no one has any concrete evidence proving what purpose they truly served. This new corridor is also, strangely, the only entrance tunnel built high above ground level, which adds another spanner to the scientists' understanding of what might be hiding inside the chamber it leads to. For now, at least, the mystery perseveres, keeping scientists on edge. After all, if it took thousands of years for us to discover this secret chamber, who knows what else might be in there, waiting for us to let it out? What secrets do you think the Great Pyramid is hiding? Could it be another burial chamber, or perhaps something forgotten that was left to guard the king and his queen in their eternal slumber? Let me know down in the comments. And while you're there, be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons. All done? Alright, what dark discovery have we got next? Puzzling pyramids. I've already told you how big at least one of the pyramids of Giza is, but you really need to see all of them together to appreciate just how magnificent they are. However, what's most amazing isn't their size or age, but their accuracy. Whether it's an extremely weird coincidence, a genius understanding of geometry, or a supernatural intervention, these pyramids are all geometrically perfect. By that, I mean beyond their bases being practically identical lengths to each other, they also adhere to two universal mathematical principles, known as the golden ratio and pi. Scientists discovered that if you divided the perimeter of one of the pyramids by its height, the result only differs 0.1% from the calculation of pi, which is the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter. The golden ratio, on the other hand, is where the ratio of two quantities is the same as the ratio of their sum to the larger of the two quantities, and the ratio of the slant height of the pyramids to half their base dimension almost achieves this number exactly. Okay, that's a lot of math lingo. Suffice to say, the fact that the basic math of the pyramids adheres to one of these equations is amazing. 2? That's insane! Why? Well, because these mathematical principles wouldn't exist for thousands of years when they were built. To add even more fuel to the mathematical fire we've started, the very position of the pyramids has been analyzed, and theories have emerged claiming the location of the three largest lines up with the stars in the Orion constellation, specifically the three that make up the belt. Why? Well, these stars were associated with the Egyptian god Osiris, god of rebirth and the afterlife. So, building mathematically perfect giant stone structures to both house the dead and honor a god is totally normal, right? Right? Well, the idea alone is intimidating, but it would mean ancient Egyptian civilization was much smarter than scientists are really prepared to admit. So what did they know then that we don't know now? While the star set theory has been hotly debated, there's another part of the pyramids that simply can't be debunked, and that's their size. With each block making up the pyramids weighing at least 2 tons, the largest of the monuments is made from almost 9,000 tons of granite, over 550,000 tons of mortar, and more than 6 million tons of limestone, put together before any kind of modern machinery was invented. What's more, what we see today is only what remains of the pyramids. 4,500 years ago, It's believed each one was finished in a coat of white limestone, topped with a cap of pure gold. But how? How was building this great pyramid possible? Well, workers would travel southeast of Giza to the Tura quarries over the Nile and hammer wooden wedges into the stone. Then they'd soak the stone in water. The wedges would absorb this water, expand, and in doing so, crack the rock into neat blocks. These blocks were pulled by people from the quarries and ferried across the Nile before being dragged on sleds, again by people, and probably some animals too, all the way to the site of the pyramid. And that's when the real work began. A ramp and pulley system was utilized so that the heavy blocks could be hauled up the pyramid, all 454 feet of it, where they were finally smoothed down into shape. That is a beastly amount of work, which was completed not once, but at least 3 times over for each adjacent pyramid, which is why their purpose is so hotly debated. Surely they didn't do all that to line up with some stars, right? Well, after that, I think I can understand why the very existence of these monuments is as baffling as it is terrifying. Alien evidence. No matter how hard Egyptologists try, they just can't beat the alien allegations. Any weird artifact, tomb, or new discovery will instantly set the conspiracy community off, claiming the ancient Egyptians weren't actually that smart and that they only achieved these amazing feats of engineering and construction with the help of aliens. Take this set of Egyptian jewelry, for example. Those stone beads were actually made from meteorites. And that's not all. King Tut's most treasured dagger was also found to be made of meteoric iron. While the most logical conclusion is that ancient Egyptians recognized the worth of the metallic space rocks and treasured them for their unique properties, conspiracy theorists believe they were alien gifts. Oh boy. And the crazy claims don't stop there. Back in 2017, during a house renovation in southern Egypt, it was reported some ancient coins were found with images of alien creatures and UFOs etched on them. This immediately sent the conspiracy theorists into a craze. Finally, they had proof that aliens were in contact with the ancient Egyptians. Unfortunately, despite making headlines in some, let's say, less reputable news outlets, the coins weren't verified with any official archaeological study. In fact, the entire discovery was a complete hoax. I think I might die of not surprise. It turns out digital artist Cryptomaniacal entered a Photoshop competition back in 2011 by manipulating a portrait image of an old Greek coin. The UFOs, on the other hand, just turned out to be French tokens depicting clouds and a shield descending from the sky, which those news outlets would have realized if they'd done any research at all. Well, that figures. But what I really want to know is what the conspiracy theorists thought aliens needed with coins. Like, these guys have conquered the technology behind space travel. Surely they had the tech for cashless society. Under wraps. Crocodiles are scary enough, but this next discovery takes that fear to a whole new level. Back in January 2023, archaeologists excavating an undisturbed tomb on the western bank of the River Nile uncovered something unexpected. Laid out before them were more than 10 mummies more than 2,500 years old. But they weren't humans. They were crocodiles. Some small, some more than 7 feet long, all preserved in time. And terrifyingly well preserved at that. As it turns out, their mummification process had been very unconventional. Usually, mummifications involve removing the organs before filling the body with sweet-smelling aromas and salt. They were then covered in resin and wrapped in linen. But these crocodiles were buried without resin or linen. Traces of rope on the croco mummies hint that they were tied up until they became dehydrated. And, well, you get the idea. But why would anyone do this to one croc, let alone 10? Well, crocodiles were typically associated with the crocodile-headed god Sobek, and were often bred solely for sacrifice. Yikes. These sacrifices were used to ask help from Sobek, who they believed symbolized fertile soil for crops and protection from deadly reptiles. Oh, the irony. Previous tombs excavated by archaeologists have revealed similar crocodile mummy hoards, many of which are now on display in museums around the world. But what's unnerving is that none discovered before have been preserved like this. Could it be these were some of the first animal mummies ever made? Is that why the process was so incomplete? The exact answer still eludes researchers to this day, which somehow is more unnerving the more you think about it. A handy trade. The ancient city of Avaris was once home to Egyptian royalty, specifically the kings of the 15th dynasty of Egypt, known as Hyksos. Though these kings did not rule all of Egypt, writings reveal Hyksos were feared above all others at the time. Archaeologists have tried to uncover exactly what it was that made them so feared, and back in 2012, they found out why. These archaeologists were excavating a Hyksos palace in Avaris when they discovered a series of pits that would have been the entrance to the throne room. As they dug further down, they suddenly realized that they weren't moving aside rocks, but bones. Hand bones. The more they dug, the more bones were revealed, until they saw that in 3 pits there were some 18 human hands dating back some 3,600 years ago. What sick obsession did Egyptian royalty have with hacked-off hands? Well, as with most things, it's believed that it was all down to a ritual. A soldier would present the hand of an enemy in exchange for gold. Each pit represents a ceremony, most likely a celebration of their enemy's defeat. Or, considering their placement, they might have been placed in the pits to intimidate anyone walking into the throne room. I feel intimidated just learning about them, never mind seeing them. While incredibly gruesome, what's really thrown Egyptologists is the size of the hands. They're unusually large. What the significance of that is, researchers don't know. But it's believed the hands all belonged to men and possibly one woman. Even creepier, the hands were likely kept and collected for 24 to 48 hours before being placed in the pits. I really don't envy the archaeologists who had to uncover them. Thanks to this discovery, these hands have successfully traumatized a new generation. A message from the grave. What's the scariest book you've ever read? Was it a Stephen King classic like The Shining? Or something so horrific it scarred you, like 50 Shades of Grey? Whatever it was, I can tell you now, it was nowhere near as terrifying as the Books of the Dead. Each written around 1550 to 50 BC by ancient Egyptian priests, these artifacts are some of the most incredible and terrifying ancient discoveries ever found. The scrolls, made of papyrus, include funerary texts which are made up of magic spells, each one written to help a person through the afterlife. But it's not a finite text, like the Bible, for example. Each scroll was filled with spells tailored to the person set to travel the afterlife, like a will, but magic and creepy, with many scrolls even illustrated with the journey the person would take through the afterlife. Creepiness aside, what it has done is given scientists an incredibly generous understanding of their religious beliefs, afterlife rituals, and of course, their beloved gods. A very recent discovery of a particular book was unearthed in Saqqara back in February 2023. This scroll is a huge 52-foot long, and the text is more than 2,000 years old. Researchers believe that it was owned by a man and his wife, since they feature quite a few times in the book. Books of the Dead continue to astound scientists when they're found, because it shows just how obsessed the culture was with death itself. It's a trap! Could you think of anything that sounds worse than disturbing an ancient, slumbering god of death? While it might sound like a scene you'd only find in a fantasy book, This is exactly what archaeologists did when they stumbled upon the tomb of Osiris. Now, Osiris is an ancient Egyptian deity responsible for ruling the afterlife and overseeing the judgment of all souls who enter his realm. But being a god, you wouldn't think he had a physical presence on Earth. However, back in 2015, when scientists first fully uncovered the tomb on the bank of the Nile in Abydos, they had to wonder if these gods had once been real. Reliefs on the wall show demons brandishing knives. A statue of Osiris guards the funerary chamber of the tomb, and a huge 11-foot staircase leads further down, apparently guiding anyone unfortunate enough to step foot here down to the underworld. Like that wasn't spine-chilling enough, the tomb's layout continues down vents and channels that keep going down and down, almost 50 feet, until anyone there feels like they've been buried too. As haunting as this discovery was, though, no god lies there. It's believed that this multi-level structure is actually an ancient replica of the Osirian, a complex dedicated to Osiris built at the Temple of Seti in Abydos. But that only begs the question, why would Osiris need two tombs? Unless they're not tombs, and are in fact entrances to the underworld itself, which are merely guarded by Osiris. Oh my. Ironically, the feeling of being down there is starting to creep up on me. Mummy mayhem. Okay, I don't want to exaggerate, but the next discovery we're about to uncover might just be the most heartbreaking thing you'll ever hear, depending on how much you love animals. Back in 2015, archaeologists explored a mysterious catacomb in North Sakra, which was found to hold over 8 million mummies. Yeah, 8 million. That's enough mummies to fill the biggest stadium in the world 53 times over. The ancient Egyptians built this giant catacomb some 2,500 years ago, in the 4th century BC. And the mummies themselves, well, tragically, most of them were dogs and cats. They were placed right next to the Temple of Anubis, a building dedicated to the hound-headed god of death. It's fitting, but that doesn't make me hate it any less. Sadly, many of them would have been put in the tomb from birth, or from when they were just puppies and kittens, as sacrifices to the gods. So, much like the crocodiles from before, these little canines and kitties were used solely as an intermediary between humans and deities. I know if I was one of the team that uncovered this catacomb, I'd have been left shaking. Food, feasts, and falcons. When you think of a shrine, you tend to imagine statues, offerings, maybe some crazy photographic display that looks a little overzealous, shall we say? Well, here's a brain teaser for you. In the port city of Berenike, archaeologists have discovered a 1,700-year-old falcon shrine. Yep, a falcon shrine, as in a shrine to the birds, which contains the remains of 15 falcons on a pedestal, except they're all headless. Why on earth? Who hates falcons that much? But that's not all. A stone monument was found in a separate room depicting 4 deities, 2 of which are completely unknown. One of them, however, does have a falcon for a head, leading researchers to believe it could be Horus, the falcon-headed god of kingship. But things get even weirder, because the remains of fish, mammals, and bird eggshells were also found littered around the shrine, along with a very alarming message. An inscription on a stone slab reads, "It is improper to boil a head in here." I'm sorry, boil a head? Were ancient Egyptians boiling falcon heads in secret here? Was it part of some sacrificial ritual? Some suggest that feasting may have happened at this shrine, hence the no boiling heads instruction, assumedly so people didn't lose their appetites. But then, why cut off the heads? It's all a very unnerving and unique mystery. Some believe that the shrine was the site of some dark and twisted cult practice, which, for all the head boiling, sounds like the most plausible explanation we have right now. Have you got any idea what this shrine might be used for? Let me know down in the comments. Sarcophagus curse. When you're explicitly told not to do something, don't you find you want to do it even more? Well, for scientists in Alexandria, That feeling became all too real when they uncovered this impossibly ominous black granite sarcophagus back in 2018. At some 2,000 years old, it dated back to the time Alexander the Great conquered the area, and it was even rumored the granite casket held his remains. This fueled local speculations that it was cursed, and opening it would surely unleash a terrible fate upon the world. But instead of listening to local legends, archaeologists did what archaeologists do. They cracked it open and took a good look inside. While the Crusader was nowhere to be found, they did discover the skeletons of 2 men and a woman. One of them even had a hole in its skull from what seemed to be some form of ancient brain surgery. But that's nothing compared to the mysterious red liquid they also found inside. No, it wasn't blood. It was liquid sewage. Ugh. While it's not clear how sewage got in there, it must have leaked in at some point. Or perhaps the sewage and wretched bacteria therein is the curse itself. Many believe that the 9-foot-long, 30-ton coffin was never, ever supposed to be opened, as it would inevitably doom us all in the long run. And learning about that nasty liquid, I sure as heck feel cursed. For better or worse, it did give the internet plenty of meme material though, with many obsessing over its mummy juice. There was even a petition put to the Egyptian government to allow people to drink it so they could assume its powers. Yeah, there's no doubt that opening this thing was definitely a mistake. From scheme to scream. In a tomb, no one can hear you scream. But it turns out we can see you scream, if one particular mummy discovered back in 1881 is anything to go by. It was part of a royal cache at Deir el-Bahari in Thebes. So, being royalty, excavators were expecting immaculately preserved bodies. However, what they found was truly terrifying. The mummy looked like it was in complete agony, its mouth frozen open, as if it had been eternally screaming into the darkness for centuries. But for the excavators, this frightening discovery was nothing compared to the mummy's story. You see, these remains are likely to have once been a prince of Egypt. With such high status, you'd think he'd have the best sarcophagus, the best burial, and the best items for the rituals to carry him into the afterlife. However, this mummy had all its organs intact, was crudely wrapped in a goat skin, and had no offerings left at its side. Well, it turns out, you don't get the privileges of a royal burial if you plan to usurp your father. Yeah, it's believed this is Prince Penterwer, an heir who got involved in a high-stakes conspiracy to dethrone his father, Ramses III, back in 1155 BCE and take the kingship for himself. After everything came to light, instead of facing a public punishment, he, voluntarily decided to visit the afterlife, if you get my meaning. When you commit high treason in 1155 BCE, it means you're not going to get the majestic Egyptian burial you wanted. And as a result, he's been left screaming his last moments for thousands of years. Scientists are still unsure of the exact cause of death, or why he was part of a plot to remove the pharaoh. What's worse is that we don't know if he's screaming in pain or begging for mercy. No. Which of these discoveries did you fear the most? And which ones would you actually like to see for yourself? Let me know down in the comments below, and thanks for watching.